Welcome to the Dr. Broadway Podcast, the musical theater history podcast, where a couple of doctors sit around and talk about Broadway. I'm your co-host, Dr. Kristin Stultz Pressley, joined as always by Dr. Tracey Brent-Chessum. Tracey, we are throwing it back today.
This is a throwback?
This is a throwback.
We've been talking all about the 90s. Like,
that's very fair.
Now I'm starting. We've just been living in the 90s for so long that I'm like, it's not like a 1950s show or anything.
No, that's fair. Very fair. Very fair. So what are we talking about?
So today we talk and look, today we're looking at The Who's Tommy.
That's right.
So a musical called Tommy.
That's right.
The music of the 1960s band The Who.
That's exactly right. It is confusing. I remember
because I always thought it was The Who's, W-H-O-S-E, Who's Tommy. And I was like,
Tommy?
I don't understand. And I mean, that just shows you what a great rock musical education I had. I had no idea who The Who was. And
I think that was the saving grace for me. I did know who The Who was because I remembered my parents frequently talking about two groups. One was called The Who and one was called The Guess Who. So there were two different groups and I was able to recognize, okay, this is not The Guess Who, this is The Who.
The Who.
But that's all I knew about them.
But they were a band in the 60s,
They were not The Guess Who. They were not The Guess Who.
But
so if you're like me and Tracey, let me tell you about The Who.
Yeah, but it's based on a movie, right? Like there's a movie.
Well, it starts as a record. So stick with me because it's an early concept album. And so that connects it to what was happening on Broadway not too much later. I mean, The Who, the group, their album Tommy comes out in 1969. Okay. And then it becomes a film in 1975. But really the musical doesn't have anything to do with the film. But we'll get into all of it. But 69, this concept album comes out. And you got to think the Brown album, which was Jesus Christ Superstar, comes out, I think, in 70 or 71. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So this is preceding that.
Rife with concept albums all over the place.
Yes, it was the name of the game for sure. Let me tell you about The Who, though. They're a British rock band in the 60s, as we've already said. You've got your lead singer, Roger Daltrey, your guitarist, Pete Townshend. We're going to talk more about him. He's the guy who writes the music and lyrics for Tommy. He's the guy who works with Des McAnuff, which is a name you probably know if you've heard our episode on Jersey Boys. So he's going to come up a lot more than other members of the band do. The bassist is John Entwistle and the drummer is Keith Moon. And, in the 60s, after the Beatles hit, there is this huge demand for trying to capture that kind of lightning in a bottle again. So we have what's called the British invasion in rock music. And that's where all these British groups think, let's go make it big in America, just like the Beatles did. And The Who is...
they invade Broadway in the 80s.
And then they invade Broadway. They do. They do indeed. Mm-hmm. They do indeed. But The Who in particular, there were a lot of groups that are kind of fly by night and don't last very long and don't have much of an impact on the course of music history. But The Who actually does. They're very influential. They use a lot of synthesizers. They're kind of at the fore of the development of the synthesizer for rock music. The power chord guitar technique, which means absolutely nothing to me, but that's really masterminded by Pete Townshend, who is, like I said, the guitarist for The Who. And they're very important in the development of the rock opera, which of course is what we would consider shows like Jesus Christ Superstar to be, right? Mm-hmm. So they're really important. They're inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in 1990. And that's relevant to this podcast for a couple of reasons. The Four Seasons, who inspired Jersey Boys, were inducted in 1990. And Bobby Darin, who inspired Just in Time, which we just talked about very recently, also was inducted in 1990. So it was a year of some heavyweight inductions into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. But let's back up a little bit and talk specifically about their album, The Who's album, Tommy. Tommy comes out in 1969, and this was like one last ditch effort by The Who to maintain their relevance in music. And they'd basically gone through all their money. They needed something to bring them back from the dead. So that's when Pete Townshend comes up with this idea to write this album. And this will, if you know what was happening with these concept albums and these this is going to sound so familiar, but he wanted something, in his words, that was so gross and so pretentious and so dangerous. Pretentious is the word that captures my attention there, that they'll get respect and attention. So they attempted to fuse. They got it. They did get it. Indeed, they did. They fused classical music and rock music, right? And basically,
but that's
Tommy.
not what is pretentious and dangerous.
No.
No, it's the subject matter.
Yes.
We need to know about what we're walking into, because if you don't.
Let me tell you the story of the Who's Tommy. Who is Tommy? Well, Tommy is a boy whose father is a captain or general in the British Army, and he is presumed dead in battle, in war. And so Tommy's mother, as you would expect, moves on and finds another partner. And Tommy's father, to his shock and the shock of Tommy's mother, returns home. He's not dead. He's just been who knows where.
He just
surprise! He shows up one day when Tommy's mother is with her new partner. And let me tell you, Tommy's father is not happy about it. And so a fight ensues, and his mother's lover is killed by Tommy's father. And this is so traumatic for Tommy that he loses his senses. So he becomes deaf, dumb, and blind. And those are the words used in the lyrics of the show and of the album, deaf, dumb, and blind. But what he learns as he loses his senses is that he has this affinity for playing pinball because he can sense the vibrations. It's
so insane.
Outrageous. It's outrageous. It's outrageous, right? But because he's so good at playing pinball, and this is the stretch here, there are people who follow him as if he's a messiah. And that's, again, not my words.
Messiah.
These are all... These are all words from the creators.
Again, I had no idea the first time I saw this show, and I was like, what am I watching?
Right.
But you have to have a little bit of an understanding of the Who in the 1960s. Like, we are trying to be outrageous. We are trying to push the boundaries. We are trying
to stay relevant.
And poke people.
Yeah.
End of the 60s is a perfect time for that. But the stuff that they use are things that we would think are completely taboo today, like the abuse of Tommy by his uncle.
That's right. He's sexually abused by his uncle in the
show. And it is, if you don't know what you're walking into, it's a little like, what is the purpose of this? And it's like, there's not much of a purpose. It's not really the narrative.
Not at all.
It is the, what is this? Early Gen X versus their parents?
Very early. Yeah. Yes.
So the end of the baby boomers into Gen X. So end of the baby boomers kind of reacting against that greatest generation. And we know what that produced in our own country. So this shouldn't be too, surprising, I guess.
Right.
This is, San Francisco in the late 60s was an interesting place to be.
Yeah, so, absolutely.
This is where that context comes from. Otherwise, you're just like, what is this horrific thing that is like so demeaning of individuals with disabilities? And like, it's just, and almost celebrating abuse and... you have to understand where it comes from, or else it's just, I remember being like, I think we did it at Point Park when I was there, and I remember thinking, I need to leave. I can't leave. This is part of my job. Like, why am I watching this? You know?
Well, and it's
drugs,
important
lots
to
of
note
drugs.
lots of that. Well, at 69, so yeah, lots of that. But it's important to note here that it was not built as a narrative show, right? Mm-hmm. It's just series of songs that are thrown together. It's very unclear. If you just listen to the album, there's no character development. There's no through line. It's very hard to even know what character is singing what song. It's very unclear. So it was, and again, Townsend would be the first to point that out.
It's just the like, this is a song that's going to bother people. Yes, that's right.
Do it. It'll get attention, right? Yeah. And what's that saying? There's no such thing as bad publicity. Mm-hmm. I don't care what you say about me so long as you say something about me.
Yeah.
That idea, it's that idea. Let's just throw something at the wall in a last-ditch effort to just not die as a group. Well, it works, right? This album is recorded by the London Symphony Orchestra in the 1970s, early 1970s. And between the London Symphony Orchestra's recording of the songs and the Who's own recording of the songs, the two albums sell 10 million copies.
That's insane.
It's ridiculous. It's insane. But as you mentioned at the top of the episode, it also inspires a film directed by Ken Russell. Mm. And the film really, has nothing to do with the later, I'm not going to get into the story of the film other than the fact that it stars a whole lot of really famous people: Anne Margaret, Elton John, Eric Clapton, Jack Nicholson, Tina Turner, not to mention all four members of The Who. So it's got an unbelievable cast. It's directed by a man named Ken Russell, and it comes out in 1975. But that's really the end of the connection to what will become The Who's Tommy on Broadway in 1993. But it is important to note that it happened. And then after that, you have several companies trying to make a stage version out of it, including the South Coast Repertory Theater, which is still a very prominent regional theater. Trying to do it. Pete Townshend tries to block a lot of these productions at the time, but they had no narrative. They had no songs. There was no libretto. So it was all kind of these bootleg productions.
That are trying to write it themselves.
That's right. They're just trying to piecemeal it all together. But after the 1975 film and after those bootleg productions that Pete Townshend tries to embargo, he decides he's just going to let it breathe. Those are his words. Let it breathe. Just leave it alone. And honestly, I think it kind of run its course and they were on to next thing and whatever. But at the 1989 reunion tour of the Who, they play some music from Tommy, and it's received enormously positively. And so he begins to think, wait a minute, maybe I should pick this up and actually develop it into a real story, not just a series of songs that sounds like, a little bit of narrative, but not real developed narrative, certainly no developed character arcs, things like that. And this is a quote from him at the time that the show was being developed. He said, "What we're trying to do is create a new kind of rock event." And this is really important, what he says here. "A lot of people that loved rock all their lives have had it with rock and roll in live performance because they grew up on rock and now happen to like opera as well. So they feel like they've outgrown it. They've outgrown rock and roll because now they're listening to grown-up stuff, right? Quote unquote grown-up stuff. Maybe this will help to bring them back." And that resonated with me as a now 48, almost 49-year-old consumer of music. I don't want anything to do with going to a rock and roll concert anymore.
No, absolutely
not. Not a thing. Keep it. I will listen to it on Apple Music, but I don't want to go. Keep your tickets to that, right?
Every time I go, I'm disappointed.
Right.
Because it's like, oh, now I just feel my oldness.
Oh, gosh.
I'm too far away. I can't see anything.
I know.
It's too loud.
Where are we going to park?
What is going to...
Will there be traffic really when we leave? Right. And so when that quote resonated with me, because essentially what he's saying is the teenagers who were listening to our music in 1969 and didn't mind all the crap that goes along with going to a rock and roll show, are now grown-ups who do mind. And let's try to create a way that we can reach those same patrons, because they now are theatergoers with the means to buy tickets here. Yeah. So let's sell them a product here, since we're not selling it to them here anymore.
And it's like the band is moving into that stage of life too.
Yeah.
Like, we don't want to tour anymore like this. My goodness, this is awful.
We ain't getting any younger either, right? Well, you're absolutely right. Yes.
The ones that do tour forever and ever and ever are always like, this is going to be our last one. We are broken.
I know. And then they come back. I know. But this is interesting because if you listen to our Jersey Boys episode, and there's a lot of overlap between the Who's, Tommy, and Jersey Boys, and it starts with Des McAnuff, the director of both, and the La Jolla Playhouse, where both were developed. But this is another ideology that comes in actually before Jersey Boys was off the ground at all, where the two writers, as they're trying to pitch to a producer, they're going in with the story and nobody's buying it, but they changed up their pitch when they said, hey guys, the people who bought the Four Seasons records in the 60s are now going to the theater.
Yes.
Well, Pete Townshend is doing the same thing 15 years earlier. Mm-hmm. So, but it's the same thinking of, we're not selling tickets to these people in this venue anymore. So let's try to sell the same people tickets in a different venue. And it's really smart. Yeah. Really smart. Mamma Mia, I've not read that this was the intent of Mamma Mia, and I've done a ton of Mamma Mia research, but that's essentially what they're doing. All those people who went to ABBA's, blockbuster concerts all over the world are now buying tickets to see that show. So same concept.
Yeah.
And I think that's really telling that Pete Townshend is having that thought in 1989 as the Who goes on their reunion tour.
Especially because there isn't anything like this quite yet on Broadway. Like we sync this up with, we start getting a lot of jukebox musicals that happen in the mid 90s because there's nobody writing.
Right.
There's the AIDS crisis. There's lots of the British invasion. There's lots of things going on in there. But we start getting tons of these, and they're flashes in the pan. They go up, they close, they go up, they close. This is happening really, really early.
It's earlier
93. Than that, too.
Yeah, 93.
And, one of the hallmarks of that time period that we teach all the time is just that most of those that happened in the 90s don't survive, but yet Tommy's still... you see every once in a while.
Well,
obviously we're talking about it because it's going back out on tour.
That's right. It was revived on Broadway in 2024 with Des McAnuff as director.
Yeah, and you just kind of go, okay.
Yeah.
This is, I just wonder, like, how it's again, this is one of the things that is like more than 20 years, and we're now looking at it in a different way and going, so this one is kind of a structural point around these new, that doesn't really take off until you get to Mamma Mia, but it does kind of start it uses the concept album to kind of move us into it.
Yeah.
But feels less like a concept album for a show and feels more like a jukebox musical. So it kind of bridges, it's like bridging.
It does bridge
gaps.
both. It does bridge both. It is hard to file it, because if someone asked me, I wrote a book called Jukebox Musicals. Would I consider this a jukebox musical? For a while I did. I thought, I could see easily how it would fit as a jukebox musical, because it was written as an album by this group.
Concept album,
right? Yeah. So
and concept albums always led to some sort of staged.
Well, I mean, even Lin-Manuel Miranda thought that Hamilton would be a concept album. That was not intended ever to actually be a stage production. It was called the Hamilton Mixtape.
Watch a show of Alexander Hamilton.
Bingo. It's kind of the way you hedge your bets when you want to develop a show, but you're afraid nobody will want to see it. But the same thing is true of Andrew Lloyd Webber and Tim Rice. They couldn't get a producer for their show about the last week of Jesus' life through the viewpoint of Judas Iscariot. Who's going to want to see that? So let's just make an album.
Les Mis was a concept album first.
That's right.
that was how they did all of these things in the 70s, and that's when the 80s kind of takes these concept albums and runs with them. But it's on the late end of the concept album, kind of British invasion creation, and then 7-8 years too early for the jukebox.
That's right. And I go back and forth on the jukebox thing. Like, I can see that you could make a case for it, but also it was really written to be a show. I mean, not as a show, but it was written as Tommy. So it's really just the Who writing a musical. Less than them writing an album for popular consumption. That, though it is popularly consumed, I mean, it's a long discussion that I could go both ways on. I'm not gonna,
and for a long time,
fall on the sword for either way, whether it is or isn't.
But I think that's what makes it important.
Yeah,
because it is one, like, the content is horrible. It's hard to sit through. Yes. And it's kind of like so not PC at all in today's world. And I just remember kind of looking at it and going, why are we still doing this? And I'm like, well, if we're still doing it, there's something there.
That's right. That's exactly right.
Because just because it's the Who is not big enough to do it on its own. Certainly not.
Well, after that moment in 1989, when they perform it as part of their reunion tour, or perform pieces of it, and they get a great response, and Townshend has this very insightful idea that the people who went to their rock and roll shows have outgrown rock and roll shows and now want to hear the music a different way. Word gets around that he's interested in going deeper with Tommy and fleshing it out. And appropriately enough, given what we have come to learn about Des McAnuff, being that he is a guitarist himself, Pete Townshend was the guitarist for The Who, and Des McAnuff, the director of the musical, begins his life, when he's a teenager. He is a rock guitarist as well. The two are connected, and the two are connected by a group that is also not unfamiliar to this podcast, Dodger Theatricals. Yep. Again, we talked about them when we talked about Jersey Boys. So just for those who haven't heard that episode, the Dodger Theatricals, in brief, are several friends, including Rocco Landisman, who is head of Jujamcyn Theaters, Michael David, who was the producer who was in just about every way responsible for getting Jersey Boys onto Broadway, and Des McAnuff, who is one of these Dodger producers, but also a director. They start producing theater in Brooklyn in 1978. And in short order, they're working with Joseph Papp at the New York Shakespeare Festival. And then they have their first show on Broadway, talk about short order, in 1982, Pump Boys and Tinettes.
Which is then so they funny.
Have I know. They have a string.
That's coming back around too. Have you noticed?
Totally. Absolutely.
Like, okay.
Yeah, absolutely it is. Then they have a string of Tony Award winners that the Dodgers produce. Big River, 1985, which is
you
a
never
musical
see
version.
Anymore.
Never, but it's a musicalization of, is it Tom Sawyer or Huck Finn? I think it's Tom Sawyer. Is it Huck Finn? Okay, I'll go with you. I'll trust you more than me. But it's also developed at La Jolla Playhouse, which we'll talk about more in a minute. But it hits Broadway, directed by Des McAnuff, and wins him his first Tony Award for direction. The Dodgers produced The Secret Garden. They produced the very famous 1992 revival with direction by Jerry Zaks of Guys and Dolls, which starred Faith Prince and Nathan Lane as Adelaide and Nathan Detroit. So if you're looking to get a group, if you're wanting to produce a show for Broadway, particularly at this moment in time, this is a really good group to go through. And so the Dodgers get word that Townshend is wanting to do this deeper exploration of Tommy, and they connect him very appropriately. Like I said, he has an affinity for rock music and was a rock guitarist himself before becoming a director, with Des McAnuff, who is producing, not only is he a Tony Award-winning director of theater by way of Big River, but he also is the artistic director at a theater that needs programming and that is known for developing shows for Broadway, the La Jolla Playhouse. So Townshend and Des McAnuff get together in London, and they hit it off, and they agree that they want to flesh out the content of the album. And notice I said album and not film. Yeah. They really didn't want anything to do with the film. That was really Ken Russell's baby. And even though it involved the members of the band, I don't know. I've never seen the film. Yeah, I haven't either.
I mean, obviously.
Not interested.
Well, but everybody... Like, after seeing this one, I'm like, yeah no, thank you.
Yeah, but... exactly. Exactly. So they decide that they're going to, really go deeper, clarify who's who. Like I said, you can't really tell who's singing what and what is anything about on that album. So they're going to clarify it. They're going to fill in the gaps. They're going to really make it a clean narrative, or as clean as they can, story. Townshend would be the first to admit that it was flawed and incomplete. The band ran out of money while they were trying to produce the album. And it was still one of the most expensive albums ever produced up to that time. So they decide they're going to plug it in at the La Jolla Playhouse, and the Playhouse will develop it. Now, again, there's more about this on the episode about Jersey Boys, but if you haven't heard that one, La Jolla Playhouse was started in 1947 by an actor named Gregory Peck, which is probably a familiar name to most listeners of this podcast. He was actually from La Jolla, which is just outside of San Diego, and of course went on to be a very famous Hollywood actor. But his first love was working on the stage. And so he built this playhouse so that he and other actors, he was co-founded by Mel Ferrer and Dorothy McGuire, but lots of actors in film performed at the La Jolla Playhouse during its heyday. They could, during the summer times, go down, take a break from filming, and spend a couple weeks doing a show. Yeah. And it was a way for them to have their cake and eat it too.
Brush up on those particular skills.
That's exactly right. So it's a really important place. I am determined to write a book about it one day, but I'll wait until I have more time. But it does interest me a lot from a research perspective, because I just think there's so much there, because it's been doing unbelievable work since 1947. There was a hiatus for several years, but it was McAnuff that kind of brought it back from the dead in the early 80s.
Yeah.
So I think there's a lot to be told about the story there. Very recently, Des McAnuff had worked with another rock band, Ray Davies, who is the frontman of the group The Kinks. He and McAnuff had developed a 1988 musical version of Around the World in 80 Days, called 80 Days. It never played Broadway, but nevertheless, again, showed McAnuff had an affinity for rock music, that it was welcomed and embraced at the La Jolla Playhouse. Again, we'd see this repeated with Jersey Boys. So there's a lot of overlap. So McAnuff and Townshend get to work. They don't want to borrow anything from the film. I'm sure part of that is because there was no real story there. But also, I'm sure they didn't want to have to pay the director of the film any rights for borrowing pieces of his own made-up narrative. So Townshend and McAnuff co-write the book. Of course, Townshend himself writes music and lyrics.
Is yet again very disturbing.
Yeah, exactly. So the show opens in La Jolla in July of 1992. And actually, the original company had some pretty big names attached to it. So this is the company that plays that out-of-town tryout in La Jolla. It includes Michael Cerveris as Tommy. Yeah. Wow. Christian Hoff, who would later, we talk about Jersey Boys, Christian Hoff won a Tony Award for Best Supporting Actor as Tommy DeVito in Jersey Boys on Broadway. And then Alice Ripley, who wins a Tony Award for Diana, the role of Diana in Next to Normal. They're in the original company in La Jolla. And the reviews were off the chain for this show. I mean, people loved it. In the LA Times, the reviewer wrote, "The audience attending the world premiere of the first authorized," that's important. Remember how I mentioned that Townshend stopped those productions at South Coast Rep and Saddleback College and others. The first authorized version of the rock opera cheered almost as mightily as the fans must have back in 1969 when the British band first performed its landmark work.
This is later nostalgia.
Yeah.
It doesn't, it makes
Yeah.
no, I mean,
well,
I
yeah.
lived in Los Angeles in 1992,
Yeah.
like, was sentient, like, remember this time, and, you know, I mean, I guess it was very grungy, but I mean, the only thing that makes sense to me is just that it's like, these are old hippies that are like,
yes.
woo, that's
Bingo.
and they are, so the content doesn't bother them like it bothers me.
Right.
Because it's just so like, oh, and they're like, oh, that happened.
Yeah,
you know,
whatever,
like,
whatever.
The
They just play the Who.
Crack me up.
Yeah.
Because I'm like, how did they like this? Like,
I know.
how would we not going, maybe this is not something we should put on stage. Whatever.
Right.
Whatever, it's the Who.
Well, listen, so let me go on with this review because it's
I know it keeps
glowing.
Going. I know.
In adapting Tommy, McAnuff has transferred one of the most challenging and inspiring works
I'm going to die.
in contemporary pop music into a crowd-pleasing and, here's an interesting word, accessible stage production. It's an undeniably dashing, dazzling, frequently witty, extravagant, grandstanding work. In the end, however, wah wah, it is also dishearteningly empty, a sad resting place for the great Tommy legacy. What was once a probing, cutting-edge musical experience has become a mostly conventional, wah wah, this is the old hippie who's like, I'm still a hippie, I'll still go see the show live.
Yeah.
Feel-good showcase. There's almost no attempt to come to grips with the emotional or philosophical resonance of the original work.
Huh. I like the show.
It suggests that they're making it more palatable for a theatrical audience, right? But you would say it's not more palatable at all.
I mean, I don't know. I just keep coming back to like Tommy and the idea of Tommy. Not only does he, you know, stop talking and become basically mute because of this thing with his father and his mother, but they also portray him as having a severe disability to begin with.
Yes,
right?
That's right. That's right.
And I think there were a lot of movies that came out around this time where it was before we really like had the term autism and could put that moniker on somebody.
Yeah.
And it was like the video game, you know, the video game prodigies that didn't speak at all, or
right,
like in their own little world, and that's what he is portrayed as. And I don't know if it was just because, you know, autism was starting to become part of that consciousness at that point.
Yes.
But yeah, it's very so. A lot of the material is just a lot like, this just feels gratuitous. And
and to your point about autism, this is just after Rain Man, the film with Dustin Hoffman.
Yes,
who is a severely autistic man, and his brother, played by Tom Cruise.
Yeah.
So it's definitely...
lots of these things. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And so that, I guess that... I'm trying to wrap my brain around it. It's like, okay, what is this describing? Is this just gratuitous, or is this actually trying to like merge it back into society? Especially when you've got reviewers who are like, you're trying to like make this palatable for us. It's not even as crazy big as it was before. But then it's like you start adding the sexual abuse of young people into it, that kind of stuff that I'm just like, I'm not denying that these things happen, especially to kiddos that are disabled, but I'm still just wondering how am I supposed to wrap my brain around this?
I know.
Just because he is a pinball wizard and is, yay, pinball.
Yes.
Like, and where, So, I mean, don't get me wrong, like, there is something about this show that scratches an itch for a lot of people.
Yes.
It's one of those ones that I think is not far enough away for me to be able to like, and I think it's just because, I mean, I was a sentient person in 1993.
Yeah.
And I like wrapping my brain around living in that era while like they're writing this and watching it be so well loved and everything, and in my generation not well loved, right? Like so different that it's like I don't know how to put it together. It feels to me from my generational standpoint, way more like Jesus Christ Superstar, which I don't, I'm like not my favorite thing in the whole wide world either. But I'm just kind of like, I don't get it.
I agree with you. I see a lot of similarities between the two, not just because of the practical way that they were made, right? Both based on concept albums, but they're both uncomfortable enough that they're not things I would necessarily want to spend a lot of time.
And so that is one of I think it's got to be generational, and it's got to be something instinctive in the generation that I have not quite figured out yet.
Yeah.
But I mean, I think that's always the way it is, isn't it? Like the generation right above you, like I'm just lost.
Right.
I understand my grandparents did they get away with that? More than my parents' generation, right? I think that's pretty normal. So we maybe are not the best people going, rah, 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 for this particular work. Doesn't mean that you shouldn't go see it. Go see it. It's great.
Absolutely.
I mean, it's well constructed. Des McAnuff did an incredible job with it, but it does feel to me more on the one side than my generation's answer to this, and so I think it's going to hit differently with different generations of people.
Well, to your point,
is that a good way to say it?
Yeah. And in fact, to your point, another reviewer said, quote, La Jolla Playhouse hit pay dirt with The Who's Tommy. So for those who were going to the show in 1992, when this premieres at La Jolla, it's gangbusters, right? They have to extend the show multiple times, very much like they did with Jersey Boys later. Again, there's so much overlap, it's kind of startling.
And you and I are in 8th or 9th grade, so this is prime for like our parents' generation. At the time where they're like, we've got kids in high school, let's go. Actually, we can leave them at home now.
That's right. And we've got the wherewithal to buy a theater ticket, you know, by and large. We've gotten to that moment in our careers when we have some expendable income. So it's exactly what the pitch was for Jersey Boys. You know, just exactly. Yeah, it's really groundbreaking. It's really groundbreaking because again, you hear that what Ellis and Brickman did as they pitched Jersey Boys and you think, "Oh, that's so wise." But then you see again, this is why we don't say first. So you never say first because we've seen it pitched back to Townshend in 1989 doing the exact same thing. So, of course, after a successful run at La Jolla, it's going to follow the same path as Big River. It's going to Broadway. It opens at the St. James Theater, where the stage actually had to be rebuilt to accommodate the trap doors for the show, which was innovative. It also had really innovative. Now, this I am interested in from a theater technology perspective. It had a lot of issues because they used 54 projectors. There were lots of projections and lots of panels to flash those projections up on.
And not projectors this is not video projectors. Really,
no.
This is like, you remember when you used to, did you have this growing up? My dad was a big slide guy. And we'd have to sit there with the slide.
Yes.
This is what we would do instead of watching home movies. We'd watch the slide.
Click. Absolutely, I remember.
Click.
And then it got too hot if you used it for too long. It'd be like hot. You'd be like, let's take a break.
Those are the kind of projectors they're talking about here.
So
but I remember seeing some production pictures at it. I mean, it brings back kind of the gritty because you see it brings back kind of like 1960s rock and roll concert culture, very much so because of kind of how those projectors work. Right? Like it very, very hazy kind of experience. Looking at stuff and pretty cool.
And what I would love to see is that the theater becomes a pinball machine for 11 seconds in this show. I would love to have seen that. And what that makes me think of is Starlight Express.
Yes.
Like it sounds very much like Starlight Express, which for those who don't know is an Andrew Lloyd Webber show from the late 80s, like 89 maybe.
Yes.
Where
they're trains on skates.
Yes, it was a skate show where they had, he had cats in a theater in the early 80s. In the late 80s, it was skaters.
And before you had Little Mermaid on skates, you had Starlight
Yeah,
Express.
there you go. That's right. So I don't know. I think that would be interesting to see. It was a $6 million production. You know, I'm always curious about the funding of Broadway. We've talked a lot about that. So $6 million would be the modern equivalent of $13 million, which means it would be a really cheap show to produce nowadays based on that metric. It opens on Broadway at the St. James in April 22nd of 1993. And when it does, listen to this cast. So I mentioned Severus, Hoff, and Ripley were with it in La Jolla. They all are with the show on Broadway, but we add to this original Broadway company Norm Lewis in his Broadway debut. How about that? Sherry Renee Scott and Michael McElroy. So these people are, you know, only Norm Lewis was making his Broadway debut. But they're still everybody is still nonetheless early in their careers, and they're part of this show. It is nominated for 10 Tonys and wins 5 of them. It wins direction for Des McAnuff, choreography for Wayne Cilento. By the way, Wayne Cilento was part of the original company of A Chorus Line.
Okay. So it's part of that heritage, and that makes sense.
Yes, that's right. He didn't direct A Chorus Line. Obviously, that was Michael Bennett, but he was part of that original company.
Yeah.
It wins for lighting, scenic design, and score. And then
not
it closes.
Best Musical.
Not Best Musical. 93. What would 93 have been? Let's see. Would that have been Crazy for You, or was that 92?
No, that was 92.
Okay.
So what was between that
Best
and
Musical.
Beauty and the Beast?
1993. Let's see. We'll look it up. It is, Kiss of the Spider Woman. Speaking of freaky weird shows.
Oh my goodness.
You like that one?
No.
Oh, good. Okay. I was about to say. I was like, really?
93 was an odd year, y'all. I think it is. I think it's just in this weird little moment,
it's a weird moment.
between the generations there. Isn't that
Kiss
weird?
of the Spider Woman is a Cantor and Ebb show, and saw it once, never want to see it again.
And then Angels in America wins for Best Play.
Yeah.
So very
How
early
loved it,
90s.
show.
Like I think that's what you have to know going into this show, is that you just need to know where you're sitting, what generation you're in,
Right.
and you need to transplant yourself to kind of appreciate it in a different way.
But you know what what can be said about that is you can understand them why critics were so jubilant about Crazy for You, because it's such an outlier. If you're looking at Starlight Express, not that Starlight Express won Best Musical, but you know what I'm saying? Like, that's where it's plugging in. Starlight Express and Kiss of the Spider Woman and Who's Tommy. No wonder they were fired up about this good old American song and dance show in Crazy for You.
The interesting thing about the Who's Tommy, and it hasn't started touring quite yet, has it? It's just about to start.
Yes, I believe it's just about to start.
So here's yet another thing to kind of think through as you're buying tickets to this. This is going to have to be a very differently designed show. Because
it is.
In 93, very much a throwback, like, yes, making it the pinball, but what was revolutionary then.
Yeah, that's right.
It's not revolutionary now.
Right.
And we have the ability to do so much more. Yeah. And looking at what they are doing to kind of either try to rely on it as kind of a 1960s piece, or if what they're trying to do is update it for modern audiences. And I think that is going to be an interesting to see those kind of choices. Yeah.
Agreed. And I do have a little bit more information about that. So just to wrap up the original production, it closes on Broadway in June of 95, to be exact. After 900 performances, that's a long run.
That's long.
It's long. It is a long run.
Baby boomer,
they
loved parents.
They couldn't get enough of it.
Oh,
Let me tell you.
goodness.
And you know what's interesting to me about this show? If you go and even still, if you look at posters of Times Square and postcards of Times Square, you will so often still see the billboard for the Who's Tommy. It's just iconic. I remember it. So I was going to New York a lot then because I would travel with my dad when he went for work, and I remember it from that. But even still, you know, I was in New York most recently last January, and seeing posters of Times Square, and you still see that billboard. It's crazy.
It's kind of
so
insane.
It played for a good long run, and then this revival, like I said, played Broadway in 2024. This one also was directed by McAnuff, but he said he couldn't get it out of his system. He said sometimes you just don't get things out of your system, and so he wanted to come back to Tommy. And he felt like it was time to make it contemporary. So this is a reimagined, in terms of visually, you're absolutely right. It's reimagined from that original production with futuristic austerity over 1960s nostalgia, according to the New York Times.
Futuristic austerity. So what, like this is your in-town landscape or?
It suggests to me, austerity suggests to me that it's minimal in... Right? Don't you think? What do you think? Austerity would be, to me, I read
British. Are they talking about austerity because of, I don't know, what Brexit and the austerity in that
I don't know. I don't know. That's a good question. I don't know. But at any rate, just understand that this is going to be different. The words used by the New York Times are more sinister than the original. So all of those things that troubled Tracey in working with the original material might be worse in the new one. I don't know because I haven't seen it. But nevertheless, it premieres not at La Jolla this time, but rather at the Goodman Theater in Chicago, 2023. And it gets rave reviews. My man, Chris Jones in the Chicago Tribune calls it a ready for prime time stunner. It's a stunner. He loved it. Premieres on Broadway in March of 2024 at the Nederlander. The production cost $15.7 million. So, that's kind of on the low end of things nowadays. But it only runs for 132 performances, though it gets very positive reviews.
Huh. Well, It's like, who's going to Broadway right now? My parents are still able to go to Broadway. They would rather... go on a river cruise through.
Right. Bingo. Yes. Yep. That's right.
They would rather do that than go see shows.
That's right. So maybe they're playing, if it's more sinister, then maybe they're playing to a more cynical, whatever this generation is more cynical. So they made it darker for them. Yeah. Maybe. I don't know.
It's one of those shows that it's like, I didn't hear much about it being...
I didn't either at all. No. I was surprised to find out that there had been a revival because I missed it completely.
Yeah.
So, anyway, it's hitting the road.
It's going to be interesting. We'd love your feedback.
It will be interesting to see. Yeah. It will be interesting to see once this one gets out to see how it's received. So we'll find out soon enough, right? Mm-hmm. All righty. That'll do it for this episode of the Dr. Broadway podcast. Tune in for our next episode when we'll be I should not have a hard time saying that. When we will be discussing Buena Vista Social Club. Mm-hmm. Until then, which, by the way, is also, I remember having the Buena Vista Social Club album in the early 90s. Do you remember that? I remember when it hit, and it was maybe it was early 2000s, but regardless, I remember having the album, and I felt so cool and hip when I listened to that music because it was so different from anything else I'd ever heard.
Than I was.
I don't know.
Remember back to our last episode, I was the girl watching Star Trek, so...
Please see Trekkies. All right, if you've seen Trekkies, or if you'd like to have a watch party with Tracey, connect with us via email at hello@drbroadway.com or on Instagram, YouTube, or TikTok at Dr. Bway Podcast.